Welcome to Timo's Dinky Detailing. Today is an exciting one for me. This is my first Dinky toy, a 449 Chevy El Camino. As you can see, I already started this one. I started it a long time ago, maybe 25 years ago. I took it apart, stripped the paint, I glued the windshield back together, and I polished it up and got it looking as good as I could. But it got lost somewhere in storage boxes, and I was fortunate to find it. And only thing that happened was somewhere in between the interior dashboard got broken. That's a very delicate piece of plastic. So I'm going to have to do something about that. But I'm excited to get going on this one because it's my first toy ever. These came out in 1961, and I was born in 1961. They made them for a few years because I remember going to the local milk store and seeing their display cabinet and seeing this toy inside with the sticker on the side that said $1. So we'll have to get started with this one. Now, normally I would have to take the base off of the body first, but in this case, it's already been taken off years ago. So we start off by taking off the wheels. Now, I'm using a technique that I wanted to try to use just a file. I have this file that is a very high quality file, and I've ground the teeth off of the one edge, so you can drag that over the material you don't want to file, and it doesn't damage the wheel in this case. Dremel tool damages the wheel. So the axle's in good shape, but there's some rust on it, so we'll have to do something about that. It's a little bit bent, but not by much. You can see I'm choosing the end. There's the edge of the file. I'm choosing the end of the shaft that has the smaller mushroom. This is the one that would have been put together in the factory, so it has a much smaller mushroom. So I'm just taking off the minimal amount of material because at the end I'm going to have to mushroom it back out again. So I don't want to take off too much material. I want to have it come off just barely. That was not quite ready. So we turn it a little bit, find the spot we need to file off again, and we'll get it down to the right size. You can see the tires are a little bit worn, but they're in good condition, so I'm going to use them. I'm not going to, or I can order new ones, but we can always do that later. But I'm going to use these. They look pretty good on the model. And we got the other axle out. You can see there's some surface rust on the base, on the spring. This axle again looks good, but also a bit rusty. So for that rust, I'm going to try a little bit of fine sandpaper, and that sponge is there. That sponge is there to hold the interior up into the windshield. There's no other thing attaching it. It's just the sponge pushing up on it. So I'll have to find a replacement for that because that one's all worn out. So we can see I got the rust off of that spring. The spring is in good shape. It's not bent. It still works and springy. So now we're gonna take the paint off of the bottom and what's left off of the body. I'm using this rust remover, gel rust remover, only because it's the only thing I could get. We're in lockdown, and so this is what they had on Amazon. So pour a little bit in there in this container and use a cheap brush from the dollar store to spread it around. Actually, you could use a good brush because it doesn't seem to harm the brush at all. I can use this brush over and over. Try to get it in every little space and then leave it there for a while and try and dissolve that paint off. So now I've got it in the sink, and we'll try and get the paint off. It should be softened by the paint stripper. And I got my toothbrush out. This toothbrush, I took a I took a torch to it and bent it because I find it's easier to hold as I'm brushing when it's bent like this. Now the base has got rust on it, so I'm using this stuff. It's called Evapor Rust, and pour it into the container, and then I'm going to put the parts that are rusty in, which is the base, and there's 2 axles. Now Evapor Rust is a super safe rust remover. It's not very fast, so actually I'm going to put this in here, put a cover on it, and I'll leave it overnight, and we'll have a look at it when it's had time to remove the rust. In the meantime, we've got the body, and as you can see, the rust remover didn't work very well. So I'm going in with a scriber, and it's just a pointed instrument for drawing lines, and you find that you wind up doing everything with this tool. I would be better off if I had something like a dental descaler or whatever. They're like little chisels. This one, because it's a sharp point, it works well in this case where there's like a grill or those division where there's a door, in that case the tailgate. So it's a lot of work going through and getting all this stuff off because the paint stripper didn't really do anything. So still some stuff in there, so I'm going over it with the brass wire brush. And in the end, I think I got most of the stuff out. Oh, at the front there's this grill, and that's very stubborn, and those little tiny, there's a lot of detail on these models. And so I have to go into every single one of those little vents or whatever they are. So you'll notice here we're missing a pillar, the rear pillar, and the front pillar is separated from the roof. So I've found a piece of scrap aluminum, and I'm going to cut a little strip to replace that back pillar with. So I've cut this. I think it's a little too thin, so I'm going to cut from the other side a little bit thicker. You can see here, yeah, the original one's a little bit thicker. So I'll cut it. I made a cut there, and now I'm going to take this riffler, and very carefully I'm going to cut a groove into the piece before I cut it loose and attach it to the model. This is to match the other side because there's detail on the pillar that shows the window edges. So I want to give it the same groove down the middle. So I'm very carefully cutting this groove into it so that it looks like the other side. So it looks like it matches the other side. So once I've got the pillar to the shape I want, then I'm going to match it up with the body and cut it to the right length. So there, I've got my groove in there. Now the cutter I'm going to use, this is a very handy tool. It's called a nibbler, and it pulls a little shear down, and it very easily cuts aluminum. You can cut big shapes as well. So now I got to stick it in there and figure out. Oh, you can see that the whole roof is loose. It's good the other 2 pillars on the other side are holding it, and I certainly don't want them to break, so I have to be gentle doing all this. So I'm just going to put it in there, and I can see how long it needs to be and how it's going to fit in there. That's not quite in the right spot. Yeah, there you can see the little piece of the original post. So I'm going to match it up with that. So now I've cut it to the right length, and I've put a piece of tape inside so I can line this thing up and have it attached to the tape. Now to pull the roof down onto the front pillar, I'm going to put a clamp on it. First I'm going to put my super glue on here. I'm going to hold it with super glue, and this is a technique that I've seen other people use. So I'm trying it for the first time. So this is just the cheap dollar store super glue, cyanoacrylate glue, and I make sure I get it in between the pillar and the roof. And now I want to clamp it down. So I've got a little piece of scrap wood and that clamp with it's a sliding bar clamp type thing, which is perfect for a little model like this. So I gently clamp it down so that the roof now sits right onto the pillar. There we go. And now to make the connections a little bit stronger, I'm going to put some baking soda onto it. Okay, tweezers, too fine for that. Let me get my fingers in there. Got to figure out a way of delivering that stuff because it's not the easiest thing. What happens is the baking soda goes into the super glue and it all hardens instantly, and the super glue holds together all the little bits of powder, and it makes it's a pretty firm surface. So the problem is you've got a little glob of glue and it's now a little solid glob of glued together baking soda. So got to go in there and file it all out and get it all to look like the original. It's a little bit of sanding, a little bit of filing until I get it, till I'm happy with it. Now while I'm at it, I go and take a little bit of the flash from the original casting. I don't take all of it off. I want to leave a little bit so people, it looks familiar to have a little bit of flash, but I don't want too much. In the factory they wouldn't have had time to do this. So it's the next day. Let's have a look at what happened with the evapo-rust. Looks to me like there's no rust on that baby. Looks absolutely 100% rust free. Looks beautiful. Same with the axles. Notice I don't even wear gloves with this stuff. It says that you should rinse your hands after doing it. Don't even wash them, just rinse them. So those are the steel parts, and they are all completely rust free now, so they look beautiful. So I've taped up the spring on the base because I want to leave that part shiny, and also I've taped up the little rivet. See, I'm not going to take that spring off because I don't know how I would ever rivet this thing back together, and I would wind up with something ugly. So I leave it there. It's on the spring is on the inside of the model, so if it's not perfect, nobody's going to see it, but they're going to see the base. So I'm going to make sure that the rivet has its brass. It's a brass rivet, so you'll see the brass, and the paint will go around it. So I've put a piece of tape on the bottom, and I've got these surgical hemostat forceps, or whatever you're going to call them. And those are very handy because you're not holding, otherwise you have no place to hold the thing while you're painting it. And I've got the standard Tremclad gloss black paint. The original base was glossy. Some of the later models, they were semi-gloss, but this original one was glossy. I remember as a child. So now I'm going to address the interior with the dashboard broken off. First I've got to get that steering wheel out of there. And of course it's got a mushroom on the end, which I can't really remove. It's going to have to stay there because eventually I have to put it back together. So it's a bit of a trick to get this thing out of there. So let's try it with the tweezers. It's very fragile. It's very brittle plastic, which is probably, oh, well, there we go. That's how brittle it is. So broke it up a little bit more. So I'm going to have to repair the dashboard. I'm going to have to attach something. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the model up. And from that measurement, I go to a piece of polystyrene I bought some time ago, so I don't remember where I bought it. It's a 1mm sheet of polystyrene, and it's very easy to deal with. You can cut it with scissors, and so I've just measured it, and I'm going to cut it out, and then I'll then have to shape the corners to make it look like the curved front of the dashboard. So to attach it, I'm using 5-minute epoxy. This is stuff I get at the local dollar store. When I was young, I remember 5-minute epoxy. It was just crap. It never hardened. This stuff is like a miracle. 5 minutes, like advertised, and it goes hard and dry. So now I've got that piece you can see in the background, and this is going to go on top of that because the dashboard actually sits higher than the edge where it matches the window. So I have to have it sticking up above the bottom level of the window. So I'm just cutting it, trimming it around with the scissors so that it fits, and that'll fit perfectly. You can see I scribed a line when it's actually in the model, so I know it's going to be exactly the right size. Now I get back my file, and once again, this is a beautiful file. It cuts perfectly, it cuts quickly, and it always makes a beautiful smooth surface. So I use it for everything. So I've rounded it all off, and then I'm going to glue it again with the 2-part epoxy to the top, and that'll be my dashboard, which will look like the original dashboard once it's painted. So here I'm taking the red paint. I could paint just that red, but I think it needs to be. I've got a mint model that I bought later on, so I can see the color, and it's a little bit more orangey red. The original one is quite a bit faded, sun faded, so I want it to be more like it was when it was brand new, which would have been certainly darker than the faded color. Now in my paint I use this is Mr. Color Leveling Thinner. This is a thinner for airbrush that dries more slowly than an ordinary thinner, and this way when you paint it on, if you get orange peel or something like that, you don't have to worry about it. You just take it out, let it dry, and it takes longer to dry, and while it does that, it does as it's named, it levels out. So I've mixed that color up and put a cover on it because I'm going to use it a little bit later. Now I've prepared this by actually gluing. I put epoxy glue underneath to strengthen that plastic because it's just so fragile it's going to come apart. So now it's ready. I've got a piece of tape on the bottom and a hemostat, and we put the primer on it, and I put a couple of coats. You can see I'm spinning it around and moving it around. When I'm painting, I don't want to leave it in one position because you get too much paint and it's in one position, the paint will run. But if you keep moving it around, it's going to dry quickly and it's never going to run. And that's why I do that. So now we have it primed, and I've got my paint mixed. And you can see this is my airbrush. This is my first airbrush, and it's just the compressor is in that little handle. And I had never had an airbrush before. They're very expensive to buy a compressor, so I bought this one, and you know what? It works beautifully. You can see I'm going with very light coats and just keep going over and over until it's covered with a few coats. I really enjoy this because it goes from being a damaged piece of plastic and then a big black thing glued to the front of it, and by the time, you know, as I'm doing this, I can watch it. I'm watching it transform from that thing into what looks like the original seat. And I was able to get a beautiful gloss. Look at it, it's coming out just nice. And again, I keep moving it around. And here we go. Now, the hole is a little bit too small to get the steering wheel in, so I've got a drill that's the right size, and it's in a little pin vise, and I'm just twisting it between my fingers to get the drill to go through. And put a little air to blow the swarf out of the way. And now I'm going to see if I can get that steering wheel in there. Still difficult to do. Got to get that mushroom to push through. There we go. Yeah, I washed that steering wheel with a little soap and water. So that's ready. Now, I didn't do this before. I need to finish drilling and then tapping these posts, the rivet posts, because I'm going to put a screw in there. So I've got a tap drill for a 440 screw, and I'm putting this little piece of tape to mark the depth. I don't want to go too deep with this because on the other side of that is the bed of the pickup truck portion. And if I go too deep, I'm going to come right through, and there's no way I'm going to be able to repair that beautiful base because it has such sharp square lines. So I don't want to go through. I want to make sure I don't. So when I'm drilling, you got to be real careful. You got to be careful I don't go all the way through. So I'm being very cautious, overcautious. Pull the swarf off, and let's go a little bit more. So now I get my tap out. This is a 440 tap. It's much easier to get metric stuff nowadays, even here in Canada, but I have a whole toolbox full of Imperial tools, so I'm going to be using Imperial, in this case 440. And now the second tap, the end has been ground off because they usually have a pointy end. This lets me get deeper so that I can maximize the length for the screws that I have. I'm going to have to order some shorter screws because I don't need to keep going so deep just because I have a longer screw. So again, same thing in the front. In the front it's a little bit easier. I could go deeper because there's more room. It's a longer rivet post, and so even if I have a little bit longer screw, it's not such a big issue. So that's both of them tapped. I can put the back one back in there. Now I'm getting ready for painting it. What I'm doing is I've been handling this thing with my hands. It's got my grease off of my hands, so I'm cleaning it up with some 99.99% alcohol, so that it's not going to resist the paint going on. Now this is the primer I'm using. It's the Tamiya Fine Surface Primer. You can get cheaper primer at the hardware store in the big can, but it's much, much thicker. It's made for doing big things like your patio furniture or your car repair. But for a little model like this, you want to have a fine paint, and the Tamiya fine primer is a very good choice. So after priming it, I saw some rough edges, and so what I've done is I've gone and I've sanded those edges, and I'm going to have to spray a little bit of primer over top of that again. There's some dents there, and that's where I sanded because the dent had raised the material, but I'm leaving the dent, just took off the raised material, and I don't think it'll be too noticeable. So just a touch, and it'll be okay. So now you can look at it and see all its glorious detail. So the paint I'm going to use on the initial coat, this is a paint that you get from Canadian Tire. It's car repair paint. It's a finishing coat. It comes in all different colors, which is very nice. In this case, it's white. It's an off-white, and it's for some Toyota or Nissan or something. And I chose it by the color of the cap. So I wanted a fairly white color, but not a perfect white. So if you use Tremclad or some rust paint or something like that, it's going to be pure white, whereas this is kind of off-white. This is my what I call the easy bake oven. I bring up the lamp to the model, and if anybody doesn't have a little sister when they're a child, they don't realize that an easy bake oven had a light bulb inside, and my sister would bake us little cakes. So I've got these wheels and I want to buff them up, so I've got out the Dremel tool and this little buff, and I put some polishing compound on it, and it wasn't cutting it. So I'm going to the big brother, the big bench grinder with the buffing wheel, same compound, but I know this is going to do a better job. So I buff the ends. It also buffs the end of the axle, so it makes that shiny. And doesn't look shiny, but that's because it has the wax from the polishing compound. Clean that off, and it looks beautiful, shiny. Polish up the axles while I'm at it. I think I'm going to do this on all my models from here on in. Get both axles, get them all polished up, and they look just gorgeous. You can see the mushroom on the end. Looks very nice. Now the white paint is dry, and we bring out the Tamiya masking tape. I've tried taping with your ordinary homeowner's masking tape, and I find it's a little bit too coarse. So this stuff is otherwise the same thing, but it's much finer, so it's a little bit better for getting into little cracks. And when you press it down, I'm hoping that it's going to prevent any of the colored paint from getting under it. So I'm going with the toothpick and rubbing all of the edges as best I can. I'm adjusting the tape so that it has the same profile as the original model. And somewhere around here I've got an original model, so I can see where that is. I'll have to show it on a different shot. So I'm taping up the whole side on both sides, but I'm not wrapping around the bottom because I'm going to be painting the inside with the green, as well, and so I want even the bottom rails of the model to be green. Now I'm going over it with the white paint again. That's so that any bleeding that's going to come from the edge of the tape will be white bleeding. And this is a tip from the internet. There you can see the model. I bought that one because I missed my first toy, so I went and I bought a mint copy of the same thing. So I can use that uh, as a sample for where the tape lines are, what the color of the interior is, and what the color of the exterior is. So you can see on the left there's pots there where I started mixing and it's going way, that's way far from what I'm looking for. So I started all over again, but now I'm mixing, starting with white. I put the blue in there, and then I need to make it a little bit more green because it's kind of a teal color that I'm trying to achieve. So I've sped this up a lot because I spent a huge amount of time trying to match, and you can see I'm not even close. And in fact, I'm going nuts trying to get this to the right color, and I'm thinking, how is it even possible? And the problem, I think, is that I've got prime colors, and I'm pretty sure that the blue on that model is some kind of a fluorescent paint. It's the green color is brighter than anything that I have in my paint pots. So I'm going to get as close as I can, and then I'm just going to say, okay, I don't want to spend another hour mixing paint because I'm not getting any closer. So that's as close as I got, and I'm going to be good with it. I'm going here again with the Mr. Color Leveling Thinner. And I want to mix it up good. So I've got, there's mixers made for, specifically for mixing paint for airbrushes. This one isn't one of them because those things are 40 bucks and this one is 10. This is a drink mixer, and it came with a little spring on the end. I just took the spring off because otherwise that would create foam. In fact, it's a foamer. So anyway, that does the same thing. It spins and it mixes up my paint just fine. So back to the spray booth, and we'll put the blue. I'm starting in the bottom, so in case there's something wrong and the paint's coming out blobby or something, then I can always fix that and not have to clean up the entire, or even strip the whole model. So if there's any problems, I'll see it on the bottom, and then I come out to the outside. And I come with a few coats, thin coats at first, and then keep building it up. And in this case, I'm able to build it up, and then to get a glossy coat, you need to coat it with enough paint after you've put a few coats on. But then you come back and you put enough paint so that it's just at the edge where it's going to start to run, and that's when you stop. And the other trick again, I'm keep moving the thing around, so that even if it gets too much on there, I'm moving it around and it's more likely to spread out and just go smooth. So there, it's now dried, and I got a nice coat of shiny because of that leveling thinner. It keeps it wet for a longer time, and then it just has, later on as you let it dry, it just smooths right out. So even sometimes parts of it don't look great, and then when it's finished, it winds up looking perfect. This is always a little bit scary time when you're doing two-tone because the tape edge is what you're scared of. I'm not sure these tweezers are the best for this because it keeps tearing the tape. But look at that, that is an absolutely perfect edge. The other side was not quite so good. I'll have to go back and touch that up. Now for the chrome, I'm using this Pilot. This is a chrome marker, and it has paint inside, and you push on the point, and in this case you make a little puddle, and then I come in with my very fine Tamiya paintbrush, and I paint the bumpers, paint the chrome and the headlights. You probably won't be able to find this particular marker because it's been in my toolbox for 15 years. And in fact, I couldn't find it, but I did find it in my toolbox, and the stuff still operates like new. Now I ran into a little trouble. Something about this paint, it kind of is resisted by the aqueous paint, the Mr. Hobby paint. So I had to come back and get a little more of this stuff and fix up where it kind of, how would you say, it kind of shed away from parts of the paint. So I've come back to fix those bits up. You can see on the bottom there, it didn't quite cover the whole bumper. So on the second try, it looks like it worked a little bit better. So now I got to think about the front, because I'm going to do this on the front as well, and I don't want it to resist. I don't know what caused that, so I'm going to clean up the front with a little bit of alcohol first and see if that makes a difference. And going over it, and you can see it's dissolving it and it's coming off on the Q-tip. So now I let it dry and we go back again, and you can see you press on this thing and then the ink comes out. So now we go on, starting with these headlights, and I don't know if it was the alcohol that did it, but it seems to be going on better than it did on the back bumper. The originals were done with a spray paint, and in the factory they had some kind of a mask, so you can see the edges are kind of fuzzy on the originals. So here we get just the basic red on the tail lights, the same way that they were painted in the factory. Got a little bit too far, so get the toothpick out and take it off before the paint dries. So now we've got that part done. Now originally there was this sponge, which looks in pretty poor shape, so I don't want to put that back. So I'll put a new sponge. So pulled this one out of the kitchen, and it's going to be a sacrificial sponge. Trying to match the size of it a little bit. It's not really critical or anything. It's just a sponge and it's gonna flatten out anyway. So that's pretty close. It's more spongy than the old one. So to put that down, I think I'm just going to use a little bit of white glue. This is the craft glue. This is nice because it's water-based, so if somebody's restoring this in the future, I'll just clean it up with some soap and water. go. So now we'll get those tires back on the wheels and we'll put the wheels back onto the base. So these are very easy to put back on. These are very nice. Even as a child, I used to take these wheels off sometimes, so I knew it was an easy thing. The rubber is very resilient and very long lasting because it's lasted all these years. They were heavily played with. You can see the rubber is worn down. You wouldn't want to use these in the winter time. But it's just a toy, so I'm not going to take it outside in the snow. You can see I'm putting the wheel on the axle because it's easier to maneuver putting the tires onto the hubs when you've got that little bit of leverage to grab onto. So now I got to get these axles underneath the springs. So I'll just put a screwdriver under there. This is one of those things where you need to have 3 hands. So the screwdriver wasn't as good, so let's try the scriber. I swear I use the scriber more than any other tool in my toolbox. Oh. Yeah, better to use the non-mushroomed end. So there, finally got those in. Fiddly job, that part. So the way I'm going to put these back on is I'm not thrilled with the drill press method. I'm going to have to figure out a better way to do that. But I like to do this. This is a small ball peen hammer, a tiny one. And I tap around the shaft to mushroom it. And before I was telling you that I didn't want to take off too much material because I also don't want to hammer too much to get that end mushroomed. So that way there's not as much hammering that has to be done. There. Do the same for the other one. Just adjust that axle so that it's sticking up a little bit. That's better. Now here's an interesting thing about this toy. It has steering. So when you press down on the one side, it steers in that direction. As a child, I remember this was brilliant. When you had a toy that didn't have this, you realize that, gee, to me it was just wrong. Having steering made it much better play value. So we're coming down to the final stages here. Got to take these button head cap screws out, and now you can see they've been painted the same blue as the body. And I think it looks beautiful when you have the blue colored, or the color of the same color as the body on the base. When that thing is new, there's a rivet there, and often the rivet had the body paint on it, so that you can see the paint color of the body on the rivet. So now I've got to get my windshield in there, and you can see that that's backwards. You can see that the interior seats on the windshield. Get that base in the right spot, and the sponge is wanting to push it out, so that's a little bit of trouble. So those screws are slightly different, so one is longer than the other, so I wanted to get the right one on the back, the short one on the back, because I have more thread on the front because it's a longer It's a longer rivet post. You can see how nice that light blue against the black looks. So now we'll have a look and remind you of what we started out with. It was an already mostly stripped car. You can see it's still showing its age here. The interior is broken. The paint isn't all stripped off. The axles look rusty, and there's even some paint on the wheels. And here's what it looks like now. It still has that crack in the windshield, and maybe I will order a new windshield because they make these things still, and put that in one day. But for now it looks beautiful. I added a little bit of flourish. I added the door handle has silver and that little piece of chrome detail on the side. I think it really makes it look sharp. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Timo's Dinky Detailing. Until next time, keep your stick on the ice.